We'll wait for a few minutes till
Yes.
everyone joins. We're already live on YouTube at the moment. Thank you all for attending the Revolutionizing Education in India webinar. We'll wait for a few minutes till participants join. Everyone very serious while we're waiting, though.
I was just looking at, there are lots of people in the waiting room. Is somebody admitting them?
Yeah, we just started admitting them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's not even 4 o'clock, so I think
Yes.
we can wait a few minutes.
People are still attending.
Mhm.
Okay, since it's a minute past, I think we'll start. People are still joining, but
Mm.
just to respect everyone else's time, who has come on time, we'll start.
Mhm.
One of the things we want to inculcate in our schools is discipline and valuing others' time. So we must practice it ourselves.
Mhm.
So welcome everyone to our webinar hosted by Curiosity Gym. We have two eminent speakers on the panel, Dr. Leena Wadia. She's the Dean of Education and Outreach and also a professor at the University of Transdisciplinary Health Sciences and Technology, also called TDU in Bangalore. She received her PhD in physics from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And since then, she's been a researcher in several places in India and abroad, including the NCST, now CDAC, at TIFR and IIT Bombay, also in CERN and EPFL in Switzerland, and at the Observer Research Foundation in Mumbai, which is a public policy think tank. She served in the corporate sector as well as senior VP and CTO of a startup in the telecom sector. Now, Leena is especially relevant to this panel because she's been a member of the technical secretariat to Dr. Kasturi Ranjan's committee of India's new national education policy, and has been member of the drafting committee of the initial draft of the draft NEP 2019, which is the precursor of the government's version that was presented in 2020. Her present focus is in the area of vocational education and its implementation in the spirit of NEP 2020. She's also co-authored a recent report on vocational education for UNESCO in their State of the Education Report for India series. Welcome, Leena, to the panel. We're really delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Girish.
We also have Rishikesh BS. Rishikesh is a professor and associate director at the School of Education of the Azim Premji University. He has 25 years of research and teaching experience. He has worked at Azim Premji Foundation for nearly 2 decades and currently teaches in the master's program at the Azim Premji University with research interests in the domain of educational policy, learner assessments, and teacher education. Rishikesh has worked closely with Dr. Kasturi Ranjan committee, writing the draft National Education Policy 2019. Subsequently, he's been a member of the 2 subcommittees provided for inputs for the implementation of NEP 2020 in school and higher education to the government of Karnataka, and also is a core member of the NEP implementation task force in Karnataka. Currently, is member of the technical secretariat to the steering committee for the drafting national curriculum framework, which, as some will know, is the next step after the policy itself. He writes regularly on education policy-related issues in national dailies and magazines to make laws and policies accessible to everyone. Thank you so much, Rishikesh, for joining us today and to help our audience, which consists of principals and teachers from around the country, from schools, both rural as well as urban, learn a little bit about what NEP is about, a little bit about the national curriculum framework, how we're going to make changes to schools.
Thanks, Girish. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. A little self-introduction for those in the audience who don't know me. I'm Girish Nair. I am founder of a company called Curiosity Gym. We are an education startup, and we've been working with schools and colleges and even community centers around the country on implementing experiential learning, right? And so we've been kind of implementing this, what I feel the spirit of NEP prior to the NEP actually being drafted in this thing. So we have the on the ground experience with some of the parts of the NEP. NEP is a large document. Some of the parts on the experiential learning pieces we have on the ground experience in the past 8 years, actually, right? So with that, I want to maybe start off the discussion with Dr. Leena. Maybe I can ask you to kind of summarize, because some in the audience have read about the word NEP in the paper, have glanced through a few paragraphs. Some in the audience have probably attended multiple seminars on NEP. But I think what is perhaps different from this seminar to many other seminars that others hold is both of you all have been part of the NEP drafting committees, and in fact even now very active in at the national level in formulating policy and things like that, and implementation of the framework. And that is I think a huge difference that not everybody has access to people like you. And so we're really honored to have both of you here. So Leena, maybe you can start off with giving a little background of how the NEP policy came about, giving a, in maybe in 5-10 minutes, kind of summarizing it, and then we can move on to Rishi to also talk about some of the implementation, what he's seeing on the ground today.
Thank you, Girish. I'll be happy to do what you said. So let me begin by trying to share my screen. It's Microsoft PowerPoint. It's asking me for system preferences. Oh my God. Okay. Well, just one second. I'm so sorry.
Should I share it instead?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it wants later. So can I share the screen now? I mean, if I
yes.
Let me just try it. I'm a little surprised that I have used this laptop before, so it's a bit. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So let me get organized on.
Yeah, you can.
The presentation mode and begin. Yeah.
Yes.
So, you said that, we need to remind ourselves of what the NEP is, and just a bit of background. I mean, NEP took many years to happen. It was announced sometime in February, I think, of 2015 by Smriti Irani. It was part of the BJP's election manifesto. And it was a good idea at the time because, you see, the last education policy was 1986. And even though we had computers and so on, and the start of the internet, we didn't really write a policy that was really 21st, readying our students for the 21st century. So it was very good that we started work on a new policy. But there were several iterations of the policy that happened before it reached Dr. Kasuri Rangan. The government called him and said that we are not happy with our efforts so far and we need a new one. And what he did was to start consulting widely. So I think the big characteristic of this NEP is that if you look at the draft NEP document, there are at least 300 groups of people who are listed there, NGOs and religious organizations and social organizations and individuals and so on. So those who asked to meet Dr. Kasturi Rangan were invited, but we also proactively went out and met many groups of people to listen to what they felt was the need of the country for the 21st century. And that's how I think we are all lucky that at the, with under Dr. Kasturi Rangan, a very professional team came together to prepare a policy that will take the country forward, actually. So in order to understand what the policy is really trying to do, the best place to begin is the vision document, vision statement. And so I'll read it because it's important. The purpose of the education system is to develop good human beings capable of rational thought and action, possessing compassion and empathy, courage and resilience, scientific temper and creative imagination, with sound ethical movings and values. It aims at producing engaged, productive, and contributing citizens for building an equitable, inclusive, and plural society as envisaged by our Constitution. The NEP then goes on to say that we don't only have to work on the cognitive abilities of students, but we want them to imbibe aesthetic, social, physical, moral, and emotional capacities and dispositions. Okay. So one moment thinking about what we read just now will tell you that there is absolutely no discussion about the knowledge that students have or the information that they have. The focus is on personality development of every child, building rational thought, empathy, courage. The focus is on development of each individual student as per their own interests and abilities, on instilling values, and on preparing them to contribute to their communities and to society, to their society and to economy. So in a sense, this vision statement signals the beginning of personalized education. And personalized education, not in the conventional sense we are using it today in the edtech field, where you say, oh, this child has already learned this, so let me teach them something more. But personalized education in the sense of looking at that individual and helping them contribute maximally to themselves and to society. So the implementation, obviously, it becomes very obvious that the implementation will rely on empowering teachers, because now we want to, have teachers use their knowledge of the abilities of students to encourage them to grow and develop their capabilities and so on. So this is very, very important. So this immediately, for this reason, I put this slide on challenges of implementing the NEP right in the beginning of this presentation, because you will realize that our education system at the moment is largely measured through exams, all kinds of exams, and they are testing rote learning, but we are not doing that anymore. We are wanting to focus on the individual students. So this is a transformational policy. It's not an incremental policy. It's not a small change. It's an overhaul. When that happens, then we have to understand that, so this is why there's also a lot of anxiety in society at the moment, that how are we going to do this? And some of the questions that Girish has assembled reflects that anxiety. So we know where we want to go. We know where the destination has been specified very well in the policy, but the pathways are not specified yet, But despite all that, the NEP 2020 represents a genuine opportunity for all of us adults in this country to give our young children a chance to succeed in the globalized knowledge economy, in which science and technology have a very large role. And what the NEP also does is that it has provided a compass to help us think about what is best for students, because it has considerable emphasis on students acquiring 21st century skills. It has emphasis on making sure that students learn how to learn and become lifelong learners, because there is no way, given the pace at which technology is changing, that students can be readied for life while they are at school or college, for that matter. And then the NEP also talks about how you have to change the focus from what do you know to what can you do with what you know. So this is really the crux of the challenge for teachers and school administrators. Girish, please tell me when I'm,
yeah, you can maybe explain. Yeah, because we'll have a lot of questions on some of those. You can go faster, perhaps. But yeah.
Yes, I will go faster. In fact, my idea was to go only through a first few slides. So normally I put a timer, but today I forgot to do that. Okay. So this is a one-slide summary of how school education is changing, and it is part of the NEP document. The earlier 1986 policy had a 10+2 system. Students came into school and at formal school at the age of 6 in the first standard. But of course, a lot of schools were admitting kids before the age of 6. And, play school was an informal setup, for children younger than 6 was an informal setup. And that has been changed completely to create a foundational stage, because we understood that, 85% of the brain development of children happened before the age of 6. So catching them young and leveraging what they are already doing, which is children are learning all the time, and leveraging it to teach them languages and to create a strong foundation is very, very important.
So now 12 years has become 15 years, but the 3 years are before first standard. Is that
That's right.
summary of
That's
this,
right.
basically?
That's right. So we
Right.
have added 3 years. So children will come into school from 3 to 6 have been included formally. And we have combined them with 1 and 2, classes 1 and 2, because we also learned, we have a lot of research now available, which in the 30 years since the last policy, which tells us that students have a very widely differing development in their early years. So some kids speak at 1.5, some speak at 4. Some kids have very good physical skills in the sense that they can dance very early. Others have a lot less balance, motor skills, all of these social skills, all of these grow very different speeds at different children, but they all sort of level off around 8 years. And this is why the foundational stage.
I had a question on this. So
Yes.
schools which did not have things before first standard, they are then empowered to do that, or how does it then
Yes.
relate to
Yes.
what happens on the ground?
Yeah. So as a consequence of the NEP talking about so strongly on foundational stage, all schools that don't have preschools will be allowed to start preschools. And in fact, in the government sector, that has already been announced in some states that they will extend the primary school into play school also, actually.
And does the reverse also happen, that a preschool can now do first and second or something, or this thing, if they have a preschool license or whatever, I don't know what they.
So those details, I think Rishi will be better prepared to answer, because he is privy to some of the conversations within governments. But one of the things that we have to understand is that we need also more capacity in the system. So allowing preschools who are already looking after 3, 4, 5 age group to go up to foundational stage, in my mind, is a good idea, actually, because but I don't know whether governments will authorize it or not. I haven't seen any formal announcement, but we'll wait for Rishi to tell us about that. Before I move away from this screen, I only want to show one more important part, which is that, in the 10+2, the +2 became junior college, and students are generally choosing science, arts, or commerce. And that, we don't want that. We want the students to actually do subjects as per their choice. Take some core subjects like basic mathematics, everybody should know, and then electives. So this is a big change. Secondary school is a big change, and we'll discuss at the time of questions. Okay, so I think I should slowly stop now. I just wanted to mention that, the NCF, so I think Girish mentioned it already, that the National Curricular Framework is the next step after the NEP. So, the curricular framework provides guidance to the people who will create the curriculum and this content and the textbooks on how to go about creating curriculum. And the NCF foundational stage is out, and it is a very beautiful document. Rishi was involved in preparing it. And all of you who have not seen it, please look at it. It talks about curricular goals, competencies, learning outcomes that we are striving for. And also it has chapters on pedagogy and, how to go about teaching it. So this is a very, very important document. The NCF for school education is expected soon. And also before the end of the year, the NCF for teacher education will also come, actually. Okay. So now I'm going into specifics. So maybe this is a good time to stop, and we can discuss more when
Sure.
The questions come up. So I think I'll stop here, Girish, if that's
so maybe
okay.
Rishi, you can add to what Leena said, and maybe highlight a little bit on the NCF itself and what's going on there.
Yeah, great.
So shall
Thanks.
I stop sharing? Maybe I'll do that. No, I think Rishi may have slides.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, probably it's useful to start off with that question you asked Leena, and Leena did respond, in a way. She said it's her personal opinion, but then that's really what the policy intends.
Okay.
Right. Now, we don't know how governments take it up and roll it out. So the policy
both ways. Both ways.
Yeah, both ways.
So
yeah, both ways, which is, as you asked, having schools being allowed to have the other ages of the foundational stage, which currently we call as pre-primary. The policy intends that we do not use the terminology pre-primary anymore, but then along with class 1 and 2, that entire age group from 3 to 8 is considered as the foundational stage. So once you're looking at it as one stage in which, as Lena very beautifully explained, children learn at different paces and learn in certain ways, and bringing all that in as part of the curriculum and pedagogy is the intention of the policy, right? So both ways, having schools have the other ages of the foundational stage come into the school stage, as well as the institutions or organizations working with children from 3 to 6 being able to have children of 7 and 8 as well as part of the foundational stage is the ideal scenario. But then we are organized in a manner, as Lena shared, for 75 years now, right? So to change that immediately is not something that is going to happen. And so what the policy says is that the first step should really be focused on the curricular integration, not necessarily where it is happening, right? So as long as the curricular integration of what is happening with 3-year-old, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and what is happening with the 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, because they're happening at different places. 3 to 6 is happening in what we are now calling pre-primary, and 7 and 8 happening in grades 1 and 2. If we integrate it curricularly, and if we have pedagogy which is appropriate for that curriculum, then after that we can move to the second stage of saying, okay, now if everything is so similar for these age groups, then why don't we do it together at a particular place, right? Now this is a very pragmatic approach that the policy takes, because the drafting committee headed by Chairperson Dr. Rangan, Dr. Kasturi Rangan, they, as you can see, are very pragmatic people. They know that they could have just written a very beautiful policy which would have said, yes, it all should be happening at one place. That's the most ideal and beautiful thing. So please try and do that. And, given another list of very fancy ideas and, finished writing it. But then we all know that that kind of a policy would just, be in the cupboards or on some tables for some time and then forgotten, right? Because they were very pragmatic people. They said, let's look at how is it that we can make this journey, that vision slide that Lena shared. And that's why it's so very important for all of us. That is really towards which we all need to move. Now, there are different pathways available for that. Individuals can take their own pathways. And Girish, as you said in the introduction, Curiosity Gym, you said, is already into experiential learning, right? So in terms of the spirit of NEP, you were already doing it. And there are many organizations like this which were doing good education, which is what NEP has taken from. And so for many, I think, this is something that may come as a surprise when they ask, when will NEP be implemented? NEP is being implemented across the country and across the world in many different ways. And more importantly, across the country by different organizations such as Curiosity Gym, such as some very progressive schools. In fact, schools with very progressive individuals. So a school which could be a very normal government school, but then with very progressive teachers, could be implementing a lot of what NEP is talking about. So in fact, NEP has borrowed a lot of these ideas from what is already happening. So these are not things that were thought of by people sitting in ivory towers. These were very pragmatic people who, as Lena said, consulted many people and picked up things. In fact, I remember very well, Lena, while these consultations were happening, one of the things that were sent out to people who were coming to meet is, please bring examples of what you're already doing, which is working, right? And which you think is benefiting the children in whichever way. And then we will try and see as to, whether it is aligning to what broadly NEP is talking about. So, so that's something that, I would like to say that, there are certain things which are ideal, but then it's not necessary that we need to fix that and then only move ahead. There are many other things, the low-hanging fruits that NEP talks about, which is the way to go. And that's the reason why I think, the implementation timeline, I will just try and share that, is a 15-year long implementation timeline. Are you able to see my slide?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this is the implementation timeline. I hope you're able to see the full screen.
Yes.
Yeah. As you can see here, right, we start with the NCF school education, which is which is out in a draft or a pre-draft manner this year, and very soon, by I think in the next couple of months, the draft version would come out, and then it'll get finalized. So that is what NEP implementation going to start with in terms of what kind of a curricular framework should guide us in terms of how we go about establishing our curriculum and the pedagogic practices. And then, as Lena mentioned, we are also going to have in this academic year the teacher education curricular framework that will come out, which will also inform the kind of pre-service teacher education that needs to happen.
You're broken up.
The 4-year integrated Bachelor of Education, right? So that's why it's so important for us when we look at NEP, and those of us interested in understanding as to what are the various shifts that NEP is talking about. It's important for us to understand that NEP doesn't talk incrementally, nor does it talk in stages. It looks at education from, as one, let's say, experience that children and then later on youth need to go through, and what is it that we as a society can provide for our children and youth for this purpose, right? And that's the reason why when, for instance, we speak about school education, we have to speak about higher education, because that's really where our teachers are getting prepared. So the teacher education program,
I think Rishi, your net is a little slow.
Which is again something that needs to get overhauled. And to hear now, you're able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me stop sharing. Maybe it will help the bandwidth. Yeah, that was just a glimpse of in terms of trying to show that there are different things that are to happen over the next 10 years, right? So though it is not incremental in terms of the changes envisaged, the way that it is thought through is in a manner that there is a shift that is not going to disturb anything too much, right? People don't really have to run helter-skelter to say, oh, well, let me just fix this now, because otherwise I'm going to miss the bus.
I think it's perhaps, when you show that timeline to principals and things, right? So it's more like is it a planning commission or a long-term thing at that level? But
Right.
Perhaps I think you're also saying from an implementation perspective, schools have been the progressive schools, or, because otherwise, for 20 years, students would have graduated. And this thing, right? So
Yeah.
What is relevant perhaps for the audience maybe is to say that while it's a long journey that at the national level we've been talking about, one can start adopting some of the mindsets. It is not that you have to do this checklist today just because it's written in the policy document. At the national level, you're talking about doing it over a long range. But you got to start now. If you don't start now, you will never reach there. Is that fair? I mean, is that a fair way to characterize what the intention is?
Absolutely. And as I think I did spot this one line in Lina's one of the slides as well, that the pathways are provided.
Yes.
But in terms of how quickly you want to progress on those pathways, it's left to the individual institutions, schools, colleges, universities, right? So and at the end of the day, we learn from each other and move on. And in fact, even in the National Curricular Framework, if you look at the foundational stage document, which has already come out, I mean, the reason why it is so voluminous, more than 400 pages, is because there are so many examples from the field that is being put in there, saying that these are examples from the field where people are already implementing NEP. They already are doing what the NCF is wishing that the entire country does. So that's the reason why it's so bulky, because there are so many of these illustrations. And these these are illustrations not from some fancy, elite schools. I mean, the ones many people think are of such poor quality that they need to be shut down, or, many thinking that, well, the preschool should completely come into the school education space. Do not know that there are absolutely fabulous educational practices for early learners happening in some of our Anganwadis, right? And those are the examples. So the whole idea is, where is good education happening, right? Imbibe that. And for that, one needs to understand what is good education, right? What is good education? What is it that is going to help our children in this uncertain future, or uncertain
Guys, I think
world
Rishi,
that we are
your net is
already
giving a little.
into. And it is that which Ellie speaks up, and hence says that this should be a part, because that is what is going to help our children.
I think Rishi is having some internet problems. So Rishi will come back to you.
On my Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah. So maybe to that point that Rishi just brought out on, how schools are actually already implementing some of the spirits of NEP. Maybe I can share some of what we have found from the field. So, the way we have found it is, the NEP talks a little bit about, and Leena, you talked about it, having students having the ability to think, right? So that is part of making a good individual and having the ability to think. So it's not about knowledge in your vision statement. It's about how do you start solving problems, right? Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, and the National Curriculum Framework is developing curriculum, we actually have done a lot of curriculum alignment, with existing knowledge-based stuff, but put in a different way. So rather than saying this is the rule, learn it, this is friction, learn it, you kind of turn it around and say, tell the students, why is this happening as it is happening? If this didn't happen, what do you think would happen? If it's happening, how can you optimize it? So we start inculcating kind of curiosity in that questioning in students. And we do that initially with training teachers on how to do this, as part of the pedagogy, right? So teacher training and with comprehensive, and this is, since it's a mindset shift, it is not necessarily, and sometimes teachers ask, where is the textbook? And, this is not written in line 1, and this is not the picture that is shown. And perhaps, I would argue that the NEP talks about saying that you don't actually need to wait for a book and a picture and this paragraph to be written. What it's actually encouraging you to do, to say, and this is part of the teacher training and pedagogy that is already started happening from the government down, which is saying, how do you encourage students to think? How do you encourage them to say, I don't know this thing, how do I learn it, right? So that is part of the teacher training. And then what specific knowledge is this thing is just part of that. Some of it might need infrastructure and resources, and then continuous monitoring. And then in all cases, we found that society, parents, the teachers themselves, the school administration, society itself, or the college after the school, or the school after the preschool, right? So all of them want, what is the eventual outcome? Or even if it's a non-profit organization or a government, what is the outcome of what is happening? Ability to have the students showcase their work, right? So we've tried to put together a framework where we feel that NEP can be implemented at schools, using a mindset, which is not prescriptive, right? It's more of a framework. And yeah. Rishi, is your Wi-Fi better now?
Strangely, I had all the bars shown on my Wi-Fi, so I didn't know what was wrong. So I just left the room and came back. But carry on, Girish. I think,
yes.
you could carry on. I pretty much had said what I wanted to share initially.
Sure. These are just pictures so that our audience can relate, because a lot of times, uh, when we talk about students being affected, and I think both of you all have referred to it, it always has to start with the teachers, right? And one is the schools understanding that something needs to change to make learning interesting. So we go away from a rote learning mechanism to empowering teachers to this thing. And of course, there can be certification things, but so these are just pictures from around the country on teacher training programs. And then, of course, I think Rishi, you talked about,
Girish sir,
yes,
hello. Yeah,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. So could you please put slides on full screen mode? We are not able to see full. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You're not able to see full screen?
Yeah, now better. Yeah, now better.
Yeah.
Now we can see. Thank you.
Okay. So Rishi, you talked about students being from all over, right? So in fact, the one on the left, the top left, is actually from a community center that we're running in Meghalaya, right? And kids, some girls have been walking 3 kilometers in the hilly region from multiple schools in a scarcely populated area to learn things like 3D printing, electronics, making a smart gadget, all of that. And the parents are they wanting the kids to go there after school. Okay. And I visited there in September of last year, and in the Northeast, it starts getting dark early. And we were leaving the center at about 5:30, and it was kind of getting dark. And my resource person who runs the center, he had just finished a batch. And then I said, "Are you leaving too?" He said, No, my next batch is starting." And because they are so interested in coming there and learning that, and then they go back with torchlights, and it's very safe and all that, even though it's remote. And it's so it was very and so this is being adopted. I think you mentioned it. Sometimes it can be adopted at, it's not only progressive schools or high income schools around the country. Some of this is being adopted. It's just a mindset for the school management, and then at least a few teachers in the schools to say, we want to run with it. And what we have found is the way to do it is, rather than, we initially started with doing it ourselves, and we found that is not fulfilling to us, because while we do a great job in 10 schools, our vision is to really impact a lot of students around the country, right? And the way to do it is to actually educate teachers. And I know the government is also doing a lot of free programs, from different boards, but which I encourage teachers to do. And so we can supplement that is what we're doing, right? And these are just pictures from around. So we'll go back just to give you an idea. This is just some screenshots or some videos, but to give you an idea on what can happen in schools. And in fact, even in community centers in rural areas, it's happening.
Right. Yeah.
So so we're about 40 minutes on the hour. So we have about 20 minutes left. I have a few questions that I'll initially ask y'all, and then we'll throw it open to the audience for questions, right?
Yeah.
So the first question is, when schools start hearing from the national curriculum framework and progressive schools of any socioeconomic background want to start implementing some of the mindset that is being suggested by the NEP, what is it that they need to do? And what have you seen? I've shown you a few pictures of what I feel. I'm just saying, but from a Azim Premji perspective, which has multiple these things, can you comment on that, Rishi?
Yeah. So as I said, Girish, I mean, all through the NEP drafting as well as now writing the NCF, as we are researching and trying to understand what are the different things that people are doing around the world and in our country, we are learning, every single day. And hence, I think this idea of being an engaged and continuous learner is something that has to be built as part of the ecosystem, wherein every stakeholder imbibes that principle. That's really what NEP is, trying to get everyone to become. Even if you look at what is it that NEP is trying to do for in-service teachers, the continuous professional development, what it wants higher education teachers to do. Like, for instance, any of us teaching in colleges, we hardly get any kind of professional development once we join a college. So it is this principle of being a continuous and engaged learner on a daily basis. And I think to bring that as part of the ecosystem, whether it is a small Anganwadi or just a private preschool, or it's a large school K-12, right? How do we ensure that this ecosystem is in place? I mean, as a leader of an institution, obviously, one will have to be a role model themselves. So how do we then showcase to everyone in our institution, what is it that I've learned, which is new, or what is it that I've embarked upon as a journey to learn something which I didn't know till now. So once we bring that aspect into the ecosystem, I think many things will start happening in the way NEP envisages. Couple of things to just keep in mind. These are the fundamental principles upon which currently the NCF, in fact, is being written, that every child is capable of learning. That's really where we bring in inclusive education, ensuring that every single child in our institution is capable of learning. Care is very essential, and is central to learning. Without care, we cannot really think about learning. So that's really where we bring in a child-friendly environment, understanding as to what this care is. 3, which is not only true for the foundational stage, the one that Lena mentioned, that children learn in different ways, right? Each child is different, and it hence grows, learns, and develops at its own pace. Children learn through lots of observations, through lots of experiences, right? I mean, this is the best way that we learn. And that's the reason why when, you speak about experiential learning and spirit of NEP, it kind of really resonates very well, because the best form of learning is through experiences. How do we ensure that our ecosystem provides for this? At a very young age, for these early learners, how do we ensure that we provide that space? And then for the students in our high schools, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, how do we ensure that we provide that? It can't be just within the laboratories that we have in our institutions. It will have to connect to the real world, right? So these are some of the fundamental principles, which then also talk about our culture, our society, and as to how what is in there needs to come into the learning experiences, and the new learned experiences need to go out there as well, because that's the way society moves forward, society progresses, right? So this two-way engagement between the society and the learning institution is also something which is very, very important, which currently doesn't really exist, across our country. So these are broadly the ways in which I think we can begin doing things, which the NEP is hoping that we all educators do.
So to that end, one thing that we've tried to put together is to, create a platform for students, where you said not everything happens in the lab. And in fact, there's a comment, and I think there's a, when we open it up, there's a comment, direct comment to me, that parents also participate in a lot in learning. A lot of times they don't know what's happening in school, or, so we have created a platform for students to kind of discover themselves, identify that, oh, I'm good at, I don't know, woodworking, or creating something, or, maybe craft, or maybe it's writing. So have a platform for kids to blog, write their own diary, a blog where they want to make it public, have a diary where they're writing for themselves, but don't want to show it to others. Maybe make something that, some contraption that is useful in the house, or maybe even not useful in the house, some toy, some design a game, and then they can, take a picture of it now, and then put it up on the profile and share it with their friends, but in a secure environment, so not normal social media per se, but in a so their parents can see it, whether they've done it at school or done it at home. The teachers can see it, but not the world. But maybe if then the school says, some of these projects can be public, they can have an inter-school competition where they're seeing each other's work, so that it kind of then feeds on itself.
Absolutely.
Inspiring others on what is this experiential learning. Because otherwise, again, a lot of times teachers who are very straddled with time and just finishing portion, they say, ye bhi karna hai, and how do I do this also? And here you're giving a platform for students to kind of build things themselves.
Right.
And
Yeah.
maybe I can just show that for a few minutes. So.
Yeah. And, just that one point to add there, and of course, Lena can come in because she's worked so extensively in this space. The reason why vocational education is brought into the, school stages is also this, right? So that all these opportunities open up. It's not about, creating another stream, like, for instance, the German model wherein, some choose a certain stream early so that they become experts in something. So vocational education in school is not about getting our carpenters to start, becoming a carpenter very early in life. No, it's about what you just shared, about, just exploring beyond the laboratories and getting into these and bringing it as part of the timetable so that it's not just done during free time or as considered as extracurricular. It's part of the curriculum.
Yes. So that's why this word my sphere, the vision was that they can find their own spheres of interest, because otherwise you're kind of learning. They don't, a lot of students don't know why they're learning what they're learning, right? Except that they need it to pass. But if they can create their own spheres, and we've had some employees and ex-employees in the past who are so passionate, and some of them are, on the thing, passionate about what they're doing and making and stuff, right? So they're always making projects, right? And so, you start making a portfolio. In this particular case, this kid is interested in marketing, so he's doing some marketing analysis and doing some writing work. But it could be doing some other students could be doing other things, and then doing courses and making some home automation project, maybe making, so irrespective of the kind of kid, you have a platform to upload a video, upload a picture, write about it, share it with only who you want to, write a little bit about your internship somewhere. So do some extra course that, and now, online learning is just exploding and, all of that. But you don't need to do that. You can kind of just explore yourself and try and figure out how you can build a portfolio, right? So maybe with that, I'll start. Yeah, Lena.
Girish, while you were showing this, something occurred to me, and I want to throw it out there so Rishi and you can comment. Communities of practice for teachers is considered to be a very, very important way for teachers to support each other in the work they do. And, to exchange ideas and so on. And given that so many teachers, we have 1 crore teachers in our system, okay? So 10 million teachers will have to reorient themselves to the NEP. Creating communities of practice of teachers is a very important thing to do. I was wondering whether your mice here can serve the same purpose for teachers. Actually,
Yes. So it can be, even a teacher can have an account. A teacher has visibility into her students' accounts, but not this thing. And then they can create their own group of teachers itself.
Yeah.
Right, where they're sharing things that they have created, or if the student has given permission for them to share it with others, then that can be done as well. So it's a very secure platform from the student's perspective, but also teachers can share it, right? Yeah. And it's good for the teacher because it also motivates the teacher, because maybe there are, in every school there may be some more motivated teachers and some less motivated teachers. Here, you kind of then are motivating the teacher to say, these are the kinds of things my students are doing, and some of it doesn't need to be done in the classroom, right? It can be done even at home, right? And so we encourage, and there's of course a whole movement on homeschooling and all that, which we are not even talking about. So yeah, it can be used by any strata of society, including, CSR funded projects or government projects or low income schools or communities.
So while we are on the subject of teachers, I also wanted to mention that, when everybody asks what can we do with before, government does this or NCF comes or something like that, almost every school should have a study group on the NEP to kind of look at the curriculum. Even the present curriculum can be taught differently, keeping the NEP, vision in mind, actually. So you need to have a study group of senior teachers, junior teachers, brainstorming, how do we change this in order to realize the vision of NEP, make students learn how to learn and learn through experiential learning. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of that is kind of just perhaps asking with questions, starting with questions. Pedagogy of the teacher only being a moderator, actually.
Right.
So, a lot of times teachers might sometimes think, I have to do more work.
Yeah.
I always encourage them that if you really learn it right, you may have to learn to do less work.
Less work.
Because you're then not under pressure that you need to go through all these other things. You're just more the conductor, and it's like an orchestra, right? And you're getting the ideas from the kids, and you're asking the questions of the kids, and so that's the environment where I think I don't know whether it's in the NEP, you're talking about even potentially over time. So that's why the 20-year plan, I guess, is restructuring how a classroom looks. So right, it's not one to many. I think I've read about that somewhere, right? But that will all take time. So that doesn't need to happen.
Yeah.
We actually, when we do it, we do have we encourage schools to do it where they are, five, groups of 5 or something. So a class of 40 has 8 tables, but they're sitting around. But of course, there are also discipline issues with some of that because they're kicking each other on the thing. So as administrators and teachers, we have to have the mix of what works in some places, and it may not work in every classroom, for example. Yeah. So maybe we open it up for questions, Reena. Is that okay? And
Yeah,
you
sure.
can just add your point, and then we'll.
No, I was just going to say that Rishi talked about vocational education. See, this vocational education is very, very important segue into experiential learning and also, application of your learning. So the vocational education in the NEP has 2 broad segments. One of them is exposure. And exposure means you expose kids to all kinds of vocations and professions. Professions are just the higher levels of different vocations. So, whether there is a PHC in your village and you take the child there to see how healthcare is delivered, or whether it's a railway station, or whether it is a jute processing factory or a brick kiln, or in the cities, there are so many other, whether hotels and various other places where, people are doing different kinds of jobs and you get exposed to them. So if a child gets exposed to a series of jobs, they are in better position to think about what it is that he or she wants to do. And then, at the secondary level, if we can get them started on some one direction, that would be an early start for them.
So is there enough content and material on the different vocations, Leena, for somebody looking for, okay, what is the vocation other than traditional, and even the traditional careers, of course, blooming, like, maybe there were 20 in our time and now it is 200 or 2000, I don't know. But, just in the vocational area, is there a lot of formal content that somebody can look through?
Yes, there is content. I wouldn't say that it's complete, but there are what is called, we now have a Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. And there is also a body, it's a regulatory body for skill development called NCVET, National Council for Vocational Education and Training. They are hosting what are called National Occupation Standards and qualification packs for different kinds of job roles in different professions. So the last I looked, they had nearly 3,000 such documents, okay? And these are all at the very low, national skills qualification levels 1 to 4 mostly, which is basically really secondary school level stuff. It's there, it's available. Some content on what is it that it describes a job role. So what is somebody who does so-and-so job? If you are a worker drawing blood at the health center as part of a medical laboratory, what is it that you need to know? So that kind of stuff is
At the
available.
job level.
Yeah, at the job level. But when the NCF comes out, the textbook creators and the content creators will have the very big task on hand to integrate that with their school teaching. So for example, I mentioned to you in earlier conversation that when you're learning science, you're studying about X-rays, you should look at an X-ray in a classroom, and you should understand how the machine works. Similarly, you can do it with, in a blood report, or you can there are many, you marry the professions into the science and technology classes, and also other classes, design and design thinking and so on. So there is a big task ahead of us. Some of it has started, but I think if we can all contribute, it will do better.
What we have done is on the traditional, but I would say interdisciplinary careers, maybe not on the vocational training. So this is why I asked whether there's a lot of information on vocational training. But we've put together lots of career paths, about 25 different career paths, but spanning many, probably most of the formal college streams, I would think. Okay. More the formal bachelor degrees of things. So whether it's archaeology, architecture, biotech, data science, culinary arts, financials, and in each of them, we've curated a lot of content. It's all free. Students can just, and so it's all part of the platform. We continue to, and then a student who's trying to discover a career can actually go through some of this stuff, and then start saying, and then the idea is then to start creating groups based on interest groups and that kind of thing. Then we haven't launched this yet, but something like a daily quiz, or if you're interested in finance, for example, then maybe you start getting a daily quiz on finance. So depending on what so then you can start honing the hobbies or the career path that you think you want to do, and then you may find after doing it for 2 months that, hey, this is not for me. That's perfectly fine, right? So that's the whole idea of what we're trying to do with MySphere.
Correct.
But,
Correct. Yeah.
So this is just for information for the audience. Yeah. So maybe we start taking questions from the audience.
There are 2 hands at least, I think. Yeah.
Yes. So can you unmute yourself, and or Ruella, you can unmute them.
Yeah. So Mr. Aditya Das can go ahead with his question.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. And it's a real pleasure to have this discussion. But I really have questions from our own experience. Giri and I were classmates in Cathedral School in Bombay. And, it's one of the really good schools in India. And what I found was that our science learning was completely by rote. And it was only when I went to the US that, to my utter amazement, I heard 3 words out of the mouth of a faculty that I had never heard before in India. And those 3 words were, I don't know, kind of what Girish alluded to before. But my question is, okay, if the educational system churns out these folks, I have 2 questions actually. The first question is, if this educational system turns out teachers who are basically a reflection of their own template, okay, how do we break through? How do we teach creativity? Creativity cannot be taught. Okay, my second question, you can encourage people to think, of course, but then it's up to them. As Swami Vivekananda said, the external teacher rouses the internal teacher to seek and understand things. And until you question yourself, you're not going to get any answers. Okay, so that's one. The second question I have is that we're 1.5 billion people, right? We're growing at a huge population rate even now. Okay, so there are about 300,000 science and engineering graduates every year. and bachelor's, masters, and so on and so forth, and they're really hard pressed to find jobs. So while it's all fine to talk about creativity and to expose people to multiple areas, my question is that if the system itself encourages this caste discrimination, by that I mean certain marks enable you to do science or arts or business or commerce, and you can go from science to commerce and commerce to arts.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so Aditya, I think we got the crux of the question.
Yeah.
And since there are a few others we're listening, so
Yeah. Thank you.
So Rishi and Leena, can you, either of you want to take that?
Yeah, well, I could go first if you like.
Okay.
So I'm a cathedral mom, and, my son went to cathedral. So, but getting back to serious things. See, I agree with you that we don't encourage our children to discover things, present it in class, and for the teacher to say, "I don't know," but let's find out. That would require a collaborative learning process. And for that, there is something very important that the NEP has done, which we didn't discuss today, which is to change the way assessments are done. So long as we continue to evaluate ability on the basis of marks, and a 96 has a higher privilege than a 94, then parents and students will keep chasing that. And unfortunately, we are going to be stuck in that system for quite a while. But barring the 10th standard and the 12th standards, we should encourage all schools to actually stop worrying about interim marks and start doing projects and doing collaborative things and investigative things, ask a question and collectively find an answer. So the emphasis on marks will not go away quickly, but certainly for some groups of students, we can relax that and start getting them to think differently, actually. So I'll stop here because we're short of time. Rishi, would you like to say something?
Yeah. Thanks, Leena. I mean, that's really what, NEP suggests. And, yes, teachers are really the torchbearers of this change. And hence, there is so much of a focus on what do we do with teachers, what we should be doing with teachers in NEP. In fact, in the school education section, you have chapter 5, which is on teachers, particularly existing teachers. How is it that we bring in continuous professional development? As I said, NEP's focus is on ensuring that everyone is a learner. So moment you're a learner, then you start saying that I don't know, let's figure out, right? So it's this change in the mindset, which also Girish is talking about. So bringing that in through CPD for existing 10 million teachers that we have, can't wish them away. And as we move ahead, ensuring that the new pool of teachers who come in out of a very robust and rigorous 4-year integrated B.Ed. Now, when each of these words is very important here, integrated B.Ed in a multidisciplinary university means a very different kind of an individual emerging out of your teacher education program, right? So it's not just because of those fancy words that is said there. It is said there because there is a purpose behind it. And also because it's going to take so long, it is said that it's only by 2030 that a 4-year integrated B.Ed becomes mandatory to become a teacher. So till then, you are going to have a 12th standard pass with a 2-year diploma still being recruited as a teacher, because we are not going to have enough 4-year B.Eds graduating as teachers. But by 2030, if NEP implementation is on the right role, then we should have enough number of our graduates who become teachers through a multidisciplinary integrated program. And they will be the ones who would be able to then carry on with the NEP vision without really kind of CPD that it envisages for the current set of teachers. Yeah. So yeah, all this has been thought through, in NEP. It's about now, how do we ensure that it's implemented in spirit?
Thanks. I had two other questions. One from Varsha Singh.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much, sir, for creating this meeting, and thank you, Leena ma'am, Rishi sir. I'm extremely agree with whatever Rishi sir is saying. When I'm listening him, I'm feeling as if he's speaking whatever I'm having in my mind or whatever I have noticed till now.
Mhm.
So, sir, thank you so much. Like he has said that everything is happening. Earlier also it's happening, and even today, many of the schools are implementing many of the things already. They are not waiting for NEP or anything else. And on the other hand, there are many schools, those who are so much worried about NEP that they are in such a big confusion, like what to do, what not to do, how it will start and how it will not start. When we go through, we have seen that many of the things are already happening. We need to just make a good change in that, a bit change in that. By doing that, we can easily go with this new education policy. And I believe that when we implement the new education policy in the classes, only then we can get the real issues or the real hurdles which we can face. So here I have only two uh, queries. One may be regarding the board, CBSE board. I don't know whether I should ask this question or not. Like sir has said that teachers are torchbearer in this new education policy. Teachers are the key for the success of the new education policy. So nowadays, as we all know that the teachers, we hardly get the teachers, the word teacher which we mean. Most of the person, those who are coming to this field, are teacher by chance. They are not teacher by choice. So it is very hard to make them to understand the sensitivity of the new education policy or the sensitivity of the child's mind, which is very important part of new education policy. और ये हमेशा से ही था, कोई पहली बार नहीं हुआ है. Second, parents are not ready for this. We need to make them agree that what is new education policy is going to do. Like in class 10 plus student, what they are having in their mind, when I have listening one day, I have one discussion with them that ma'am, we can choose anything, like we can study history with chemistry, we can read biology with geography, or like that. They are having these kind of questions in their mind. So they are excited, but parents are not, actually they are not getting that what is this. They need a, like, we have a particular Indian thought process of the parents. They need their kid to be very high academic performer, and we are talking about the skill development in this. So how we can make the parents to understand these 2 points, and how to uh, I mean, convert the teacher, the teacher which is by chance, the teacher which is only for earning in this field. These two problems are which are completely bothering me. Thank you.
Rishi, you want to take that?
Yeah, thanks, Varsha, ma'am. No, and these are, in fact, the challenges. In fact, Girish, when you asked as to what are the challenges, right? Because at the end of the day, since it's a paradigm shift that NEP wants, so mindset changes are the most difficult. So there are different, again, multiple tracks on which NEP, suggests things. One, of course, are those things that need to happen immediately from a bureaucracy point of view. So there is a lot of action that the government needs to take, which is about simplifying rules for establishing schools, which is about ensuring that opportunities for continuous professional development exist, which is about ensuring that the curriculum load is not unnecessary, which is ensuring through the curricular framework that all subjects are, equally provided enough time, and the examination reforms that Lena alluded to. Now, these are all things that the government should. These are not individual institutions, can't do anything about the 10th board of any state or the 12th board of any state or the CBSE. So all these together is what is going to sort these things out. So parents' minds are not just going to change just because we say these exciting things about NEP. The ecosystem will have to change, and then they will begin to realize that if their children learn this way, that is when they have the best opportunity as they go on to do their higher education. And in higher education, when they do the multidisciplinary degree, that is when really that their children are best equipped to take on the challenges, right? Either to become entrepreneurs, which is really the way forward, or to get a job, which will require, as we know, the future is so uncertain. The more creative you are, the more innovative you are, the better chance that you have of having, a good job, or ensuring that you continuously are employed, right? It's not about just one good job. So now for these things, the kind of changes that need to happen are, multiple, at multiple stages, multiple levels. Now, so there is a whole ecosystem that will have to get created. We're all partners in that. Government has to do a lot more to ease up things, to remove the bureaucracy that kind of is a stranglehold on many things, allow a lot of organizations to come into the space, so do things the way Curiosity Gym and many other organizations are doing, and ensure that our children are getting equipped. And then, is when parents will realize that, well, this is really what is going to be beneficial for my child, and not a tuition for math or a tuition for science to rote learn and crack the 12th board exam, right? So long way to go, but then, as Girish earlier you said, I mean, we have to start now. I mean, many have started already, but then it has to become the mainstream.
I think there was a question from the audience also on chat about addressing how parents need to be involved, or how they'll get educated on this. I think you addressed some of that. Lena, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Thanks, Girish. I think I'd like to add to that. See, parents are, it's a very interesting thing that parents are very strong influencers in urban India, and especially in private schools. So the managements are really trying to keep the parents happy. And whether or not the parents are asking for the right things for the children doesn't seem to matter very much at all. And on the other hand, in rural India, parents are not able to sort of, contribute even in the school management committees to making education, the educators accountable. So both ends, all ends of the spectrum exist. But I just want to say that it's important that principals of schools actually take on this task of educating the parents, because we agree, we talk all the time. I'm so fed up of listening to NEET entrance exams and IIT entrance exams. There are 16,000 seats in IIT, and we have about 12.5 million kids passing out of 12th standard, something like that. I think that number is correct for 10th standard. I'm not sure what the number for 12th standard is, but we have a few million kids passing out of 12th standard, and we are talking about a few thousand seats and a few lakh students writing entrance exams for engineering and medicine. So what happens to all the children who are not going for engineering or medicine? Shouldn't they be prepared for life too, actually? And so this conversation, the principals and their teachers need to have with the parents, actually. And for that, I think even the teachers will have to be freed up a little bit and be included in this task of educating parents. Today, just like I mentioned about both ends of parents, there are teachers also who are really trapped in schools because they are evaluated by the marks that their children get. And so they have no choice except to keep on pushing for marks, or and that's not good enough, and they are not allowed to give feedback to students, because parents will get upset. So you have to release that. The teachers have to be freed up from constraints to actually focus on their job, to kind of educate the kids, observe the kids, discuss with the parents, and tell them that, look, your child has this ability. Why don't you think about something like this? The other thing also that they need to do is to give the kind of homework that many parents can't support the children at home. So this is part of the reason why the tuition industry is thriving. They believe that the children should continue to study when they are in school, but then when they're at home, but then they can't do supervise, so they'll send them to the tuition teachers. But it is important for the students to continue to do creative work when they are at home. I can give you an example, which I had personally. I was so fascinated to find that one teacher had read a story in her class, and she sent the kids home with the homework that suppose you were the author of the story, what would you change in the story? How would the story end differently? Would you add another character? That's completely creative work, and they don't need another adult or some tuition teacher to supervise them. It sets their creative juices going. So that kind of imaginative work that they can continue to do at home to sort of keep them on the pathway that they have chosen is very, very important. So parents need to be educated, and principals should carry their teachers along to do this job. That's what I strongly believe.
So what I have found in at least a couple of schools that we've interacted with, where typically schools have this normal parent-teacher association where it becomes very confrontational kind of thing, of cribbing or but this particular school had a session which is a workshop for parents, where parents were interacting with this kind of mindset. And this was actually, I don't know, almost 18 years ago, but a progressive CBSE school in Pune, and so it was so enlightening. I had gone as a parent, actually. I wasn't even in this industry. And in fact, that kind of sparked or what the need was in a way. That, parents have to be educated on, a different way of learning. And perhaps that is the best way. But of course, somebody's got to do it, because everyone needs bandwidth and, even getting parents time to come, maybe because of this virtual stuff, maybe it can happen faster. But I think the more of that kind of thing, because I think today what I see is a lot of NEP conferences with academicians or this thing, but the parents are less involved, right? And if they are a key stakeholder, but the schools necessarily don't have the time beyond the PTA, but maybe they can start thinking about, because many principals in the audience, having some kind of workshop. Maybe there are people who can, we don't mind volunteering for a few schools on some of that, but obviously not as this thing, but on, having parents parent workshops, so you get a buy-in on what is this NEP mindset about, like you said, that needs to be educated. There was one other question, I think then we'll have to wrap, but she's raised a hand for a long time, Mamta Dahia. And then we'll have to...
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes,
Hi,
Mamta.
Mamta. Yeah.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
So actually, I'm a computer science teacher. So my
Okay.
question is regarding my subject.
Okay.
As you know, there are different subjects that are today integrated with IT or computer. Today, everybody is saying that according to new NEP 2020, every subject should be integrated with computer so that children could learn better. But is there any specific guidelines for teaching computer science, that how should we implement our curriculum in school so that students should get interesting, they should find them interesting and they could learn better? Is there any specific, because there are specific guidelines for different subjects such as English, mathematics, science, social science. There are different guidelines for each subject. But as far as I found, there is no specific guidelines for computer science. So could you please help me out?
Rishi, maybe you want to take that. Is NCF doing
You can
things?
take it
Has
and
a chapter?
I can answer from my implementation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mamta, as you asked, it's the integration that NEP talks about is slightly different. It's about ensuring that if, for instance, through understanding the computer sciences, right? I don't know what really is the syllabus that you cover, but then if in computer sciences, you're talking of algorithms, right? You're talking of coding. Now, those are aspects that get very deeply connected to some analytical thinking related aspects, right? Which are objectives of or are the curricular goals. Now, so what NEP talks about is if in a subject like computer science, right, there are aspects that are useful in this regard to enable a better grasp of the curricular goals of a given subject, then that is really where whatever you're doing as part of computer science should be in place so that there is a holistic understanding of that aspect. Yeah, that's the kind of integration that NEP is talking about. So when you said computers in every subject, that is really the interpretation. So one is that at one level. Two is in terms of using technology, right, to understand things better wherever possible. So, as a teacher, be it a geography teacher or, a science teacher, how well would I be equipped to use technology to enable my children's understanding of a curricular aspect in my subject? Yeah, so that's the other level of integration that NEP talks about. I'm not sure as to whether this really was the question. Anyways, Girish, you said that in terms of implementation, you also had some points. So maybe together it will clarify.
Yeah, and I think that I think you addressed it. A lot of it could be that you're teaching, I don't know, something like motion or distance, maybe as physics. So then you can think of, maybe you're teaching coding and there's some block-based coding, but figure out, okay, if a wheel turns and the circumference of the wheel is X, how many turns will it take to reach a wall? So that's actually you're actually teaching physics also, you're teaching math also, and you're teaching computers also, right? And if you really think about it, almost any teacher can start thinking about you're using, so computers are just a tool to achieve a task. If the task is you're teaching physics or you're teaching math, there are lots of these kind of examples. Maybe you're teaching about, maybe financial literacy is one of the things we talk about, right? So, but maybe people say, okay, if I go to even a provision store, how do I, if I add this and this and this, and with the computer program, how does it this thing? So you're teaching computers, but you're teaching something very real world, and given the local context, you make it contextual to the local context. So you can't take something that is in an urban area to the same context of what might be in a rural area, but you use the same, because in the end it's the same math and physics and geography, for example, and then you can use tools. And sometimes there are these free quizzes and all that online. For geography, for example, we use a tool called Wordle. Some of us may have to use the word played the word Wordle, but there's a thing called Wordle, and they give you a map of some country in the world, and you have to guess it. And then they'll tell you, and you guess it, and you're usually wrong. And then they'll say, oh, you're 5,000 kilometers in the northwest direction is you're away from that. And then so you start learning about the different countries in the world. It's a great way for a geography teacher to actually enliven her students and get them interested in geography. And then you can say, okay, what's the sea next to it, and what's the ocean next to it, or whatever, right? So these are ways of using tools that are out there in computer science or in IT, basically, and making it interesting. And then suddenly you can, as a computer science teacher, Mamta ma'am, you can then say, okay, if you had to code something like it, maybe they don't know all the coding skills yet. But on a whiteboard, what is the computer program itself thinking? Forget that you don't know Python or you don't know something. In English, what do you think? How is it working? And you start developing those kind of algorithmic skills. And these are things that we are doing in practice. So, okay, this has been very good. There are no other raised hands, and we are a little over the time.
There is one.
There's one? Okay. Pawan Pagaria. Yeah. Pawan, your last question.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for the time. Just one question I had, are there any, like you talked about tools, like I'm extending it further, when we talk about creativity and innovation, which NEP is also focusing on much. Is there a provision or somebody is developing tools for it? And are they generating some tools which can aid teachers to, like Lina ma'am was saying that we have to empower teachers as well. Is there a provision or somebody is doing are they developing pedagogical tools?
Yeah, so we ourselves at Curiosity Gym, that's what we do. We develop pedagogical tools. We sometimes curate them. Not everything is invented by us, but if it's open source or this thing, we curate it and we make it available as part of a teacher training program. All of the sessions that we do are in fact curiosity led, and so to us, that when we're talking about changing mindsets, right? And I had this issue even with my own staff, right? Initially, how do you get from, because all of us have gone through the old way of teaching.
Yes,
Some of us get it intuitively, and some of us have to be this thing. But it's not so difficult to change mindset once you say it's easy to do. Okay. And what the easy to do is, you actually, there's these five W's and H, right? You teach teachers to say, why is it working? Why is it not working? How is it working? When is it working? If it didn't work at this time, then what would happen? And if you kind of, and now, of course, in the IT world, to Mamta's thing, there's this new discipline called prompt engineering that's coming up. But to me, this is manual prompt engineering. As teachers, and I'm sure in the 4-year B.Ed degree interdisciplinary program, if you look at it, really, this is the mindset that all of them will need to have. And that can be inculcated even now. We have curated a lot of tools and curriculum for schools, for middle schools and high schools.
So what do you feel? Is there a more scope in developing such tools?
Yes. There's an infinite scope for developing tools, right? Because
and is it needed? I'm asking this: is there a need? Is the teachers willing to accept it? Are the teachers willing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think some schools and some principals and teachers are willing to accept. A lot of times what I have found in schools is they have to have a budget from a time perspective. It's not initially even this thing is. And so what the schools that we are dealing with, where they say, let's have 1 hour in the week, right? If there's 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, 25 hours a student is typically in school when they are physically in school. 1 hour of the 25 hours, right? And so then even from a costing perspective, sometimes government may fund or corporate may, CSR may fund or something. But even from a cost perspective, that's one way to look at it, right? It's bounded. Okay, so this is not an unbounded 600-page document that the government has this thing and all principals and school owners have to panic. It has to be bounded. Parents have limited budget for it. Right. And so these are ways that we encourage schools to adopt our programs. And we're saying that we'll teach teachers how to do it. And, to your question, are more tools needed? Yes. First, schools have to dedicate maybe an hour a week. And I think the National Education Policy also talks about bagless days. So what are schools going to do in bagless days? Right. So these are kind of time slots that are available for schools to use them. It may be called activity hour in some schools. Some schools may do it as part of the computer science / library / art and craft period, because you're actually doing a lot of it anyway in some part of it. And when you're interdisciplinary, you can't say, no, I'm only doing computer science, right? Then you're not understanding the word interdisciplinary. So then you take a little bit, half an hour from here and half an hour from here. Typically, what we've also found is that a 1 hour, when I say 1 hour a week, we prefer 1 hour a week rather than 2 half-hour a week. Okay. Because when it's 1 hour, by the time you sit down, when it's experiential learning, it really works. It doesn't work very well if it's too short a time period.
Yes, 1 hour also is too short in a way.
1 hour is, so then, we recommend more, but I'm saying this is the minimum we typically recommend. But this is something that schools and even community centers around the country have started to adopt. We found.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So with that, I'd really like to thank our panelists again. Thank you so much, Dr. Leena and Rishi. This has been wonderful sharing your insights with all of us. Yeah.
Thank you too, Girish. We learned a lot listening to you also, and about the progress that Curiosity Gym has made. And thank you to everyone who asked the questions too. And, I think we all learned from each other. That was great.
Yeah, that's always the intention.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to reach out, anyone wants to reach out to us, you all can write to explore@curiositygym.com. I put it in the chat. And even if you all want to ask questions to the panelists, you all can write emails here and we'll forward it on. Okay.
See you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye. Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh.